to our students.
Let's do it then. Identity role dynamics during a pandemic when you can't work, right? And
Right.
what do you do? How do you manage that? This is probably a time when maybe you didn't think you had an identity role struggle, and once your identity as a professional is taken away from you in many professions like trainers and exercise professionals and therapists, and what do you do? Yeah, when you're sitting at home and you can't do what you love to do in your role, right? I saw one of the doctors on TV that they're constantly bringing forth interview about what's going on and from a medical perspective, and they were predicting increased suicide rates, higher depression levels. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's definitely affecting me for sure. I mean, I can tell you definitively, like, it's been extremely difficult to not get up and be able to go to my office and work with my clients.
Yeah. So what do you do instead, right? So how, we can talk conceptually and academically about identity and role, and, identity being the seat of your self-esteem, and we're trying to protect our self-esteem from the ups and downs of what happens in our roles and the relationships in many role responsibilities. It's an easy thing to talk about, but when you're living it, right, what a different thing, right? It's hard to know how much of our self-esteem is coming from something until that thing is taken away.
Yeah, and so I mean, the question is, like, how do we protect that, not just now as we're going through this situation, but in our day-to-day work lives as well? How do we keep those two things separated professionally?
Yeah, it's tough. It's a difficult thing. We often, get so much meaning from our work, right? When you look at how, people are described, they're described often by what they do. Here's this person and they were a great philanthropist. Here this person is an actor. This person, as if that's all they are, right? And it's interesting to see the struggle too with people who have disease, right? They struggle, right, and try to separate themselves. I'm not my disease. Right?
Yeah, I've seen that a lot in my work and relationships for sure. How to kind of, because that can become an overwhelming issue for people that are struggling with disease, as to how to separate out the fact that you're dealing with something so stressful, and to kind of keep it out of who you are fundamentally as a human being. And I think it also is a major issue with people who suffer from chronic pain too, because a lot of times the people that are suffering from chronic pain, they also become, they start to identify themselves with this pain, right? I'm a person that's in pain. And it can start getting trapped inside their psychology. And I honestly, I think it's part of what perpetuates, a factor that perpetuates the ongoing chronic pain.
Well, yeah, the modern model of biopsychosocial is directly speaking to that idea, right? That the psychology and the way that we think about ourselves as human beings get so attached to the sensations that we have. And when you're in what you describe as a painful situation, both physical and emotional,
Right.
And that becomes who you are, who right, who your identity is.
Right.
And so it's an interesting dynamic. And identity theory and psychology, I've got a bunch of textbooks on it as I try to, as a lay person, get my head around that idea. How do you still feel good about yourself and who you are in the world? And when you're not able to do your primary vocation, and it's quite a conundrum. Even in the video, The Strangest Secret, near the end, Earl Nightingale's talking about, what do you do when you're not feeling so good? He tells you to do your work, and not
right.
He says do your work, and just a little more for the lavishing's sake, right? And that we don't get our satisfaction from recreation. We often get satisfaction from our work, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, it's not bad to be satisfied and feel a sense of personal satisfaction and pride about what you do, if it's legal, right? Ethical work, of course. The question is, when that's removed or when there's a problem there, does it devastate your identity and self-esteem in such a way that now all the other roles in your life as a parent or a son or a daughter or a neighbor or a spouse, do those start to now go south and degrade? That's the real problem, I think, that at least I try to get across in the course about filtering and trying to figure out how to put some fences up around what's happening in our role, and its relationship to our self-esteem and personality identification and our character, such that it doesn't affect other things.
Yeah, and it's a difficult dance. It's a difficult balance between those things. A lot of times for people, the people that want to get to this level of thinking about the body and interacting with other people's bodies and helping them manage long-term ongoing issues. I mean, those of us that are in that role, I feel like we're really passionate about it. And I feel like it's that passion and that desire to really help that can sometimes, I know in my personal experience, can sometimes almost border on a fixation or an obsession, right? Where instead of, when I'm supposed to be relaxing, on vacation or something, like if I wake up early and I have some time, I'm instead of relaxing and doing something recreational, I'm thinking about clients. Like I'm processing decisions I've made and thinking about, that sort of thing versus, actually taking the time to enjoy, something else that I'm passionate about.
Yeah, there you go. Right. Staying in the moment. Right. And if you're on vacation with your wife and, you need to be present with her in the moment and enjoy each other's company. And you can't, because in your head, you've got all this work role stuff roiling around. That's no good in that role relationship as husband, right? So, that's the real battle. And I don't know if there's any easy answers other than just the mere recognition of it, and then the internal mental self-discipline, really, of getting a handle on it and go, man, what am I doing? Obsessing about this when I'm 3 days into a vacation where I'm supposed to be relaxing so I can recover and go back to those individuals I'm so passionate about with a renewed energy and renewed focus. Right? But if you're all worn out mentally because you don't get a break, that's not helping them either.
Right. You'd said once to me that, we were talking about this, it was a long time ago, but you'd said once that, you don't have sleepless nights thinking about clients. And I'm just kind of curious as to how you have been able to separate yourself out from your role, when you go home or you're relaxing or whatever. I'm just kind of curious what steps you've taken to get your psychology in a place where you don't have, these types of obsessive thinking patterns.
Yeah, it's taken a while, dude. I mean, it's taken a while, conversations like this, obviously facilitating the coursework and revisiting it and going, wow, man, let me think about that. I get a little deeper thought, but, some of it is, one, the recognition. When I'm at work and I'm doing my role, I'm doing it the best I can, right? So when I leave, I can't say that I left anything on the field, right? I'm just, I put it all into work. I did the best I could, and that's it. I can't do any more, right? Two, the recognition that their problem, their issue, isn't mine. It's theirs. I'm here to help them with it, but they're ultimately the one who is the responsible party and the steward of the problem. They have to deal with it. And so I realized I can't own other people's problems and emotional issues anymore. That's not my job.
Was there like a moment that you had, or a specific time that just kind of, because I can tell you, I still struggle with, that's creating that separation. Not, I do feel responsible a lot of the time for everything from, how my clients' feelings and their outcomes to, not necessarily their emotional state, that's on them, but everything else I do take a lot of responsibility for. It's hard.
Yeah, I can't remember. There wasn't an aha moment. I think it was just a gradual transition and recognition. And my wife would tell me, right, what are you thinking? Where's your head at? I'm supposed to be with her out to dinner or something. And, I'm sitting there in my head thinking about stuff, and I'm not with her, and that's not fair to her. So those fed into the realization that, geez, when I'm with my family at a party or a vacation or on a holiday, I have to be with them in the moment. It's not fair to them that I'm sitting here in my head worried about something I can't do anything about right now. There's nothing I can do about it. The only time I can do anything about it is when I'm with them in a session, working with them and talking about it, and that's it. That's all I can do. And then when that's over, that's over. And when I decide to say I'm going to think about it, I'll open their file and go, let me think about their problem and what I'm doing and what I've been doing. And then I'll do it, and I'll say, all right, I got some new ideas, some ways to think about it. I'll write them down and close the file and wait till they show up and then deal with it. But yeah, when people cancel, they don't show up, they tell me they don't think what I'm doing is working or helping them, I just accept it and say, well, I did the best I could. If you don't think it's working or it's not helping you in the way you want, I've brought everything I can to the table so far,
Right.
And to ask people to be patient when it can be expensive to be patient, right?
It can be expensive from a time standpoint, a financial standpoint, an emotional standpoint. I struggle with that though. When a client does that, they leave for whatever reason, I have a tendency to ruminate, like, rethinking every decision I made, like, could I have done something different, but I guess there's just really no point in doing that. It's just really hard when you're so passionate. I don't want anybody to not get where they want to go, especially if they're spending a lot of money and time and emotional energy with us.
Yeah, again, and again, there's that balance, that professional balance of there's nothing wrong. In fact, it's the right thing to do to review your game film, right? And look at your game film and say, okay, I could have done that better. Next time I'm in this situation, I'll take that lesson and bring it forward. But if it starts to paralyze you a little bit, then you lose confidence in yourself and your abilities, and you start to hesitate. Professional athletes, they deal with this all the time. This is probably their biggest issue, is the mental side of it. Once you get to a certain skill level, from a physical perspective, it's almost all mental, right? And so being able to say, all right, I learned a lesson. Next time I'm in that situation, here's how I'll think about it, and then move along. The scene that came up into my mind as we were talking about this is that scene in Top Gun, right, where Tom Cruise's character's Rio is killed in that accident, right? And now Tom Cruise, the pilot, his best friend is killed. He takes on the full weight of what happened. It's depressing. He should mourn his friend. He should look at whether or not he was professionally responsible. He gets cleared, right? They do an investigation. He's cleared. They're saying, all right, let's get him back up flying again. And now he won't engage, right? He's not fulfilling his role responsibilities anymore. He doesn't feel confident or competent. And that's a dangerous situation, right?
Extremely. I think it's important, and this is something that I have improved upon dramatically as time has gone along, is that when that does happen, when the client leaves or they're just saying, if you feel like you made a mistake, internalize it, accept it, but also, take it as a gift that you learned something here too. And then maybe if you see a situation that's similar in the future, you're not going to make that same mistake. It can actually be really empowering, like a really amazing learning experience if you flip the script in the way that you think about it from a psycho-emotional standpoint.
Yes, that's part of the that whole section where we talk about successful people, and one of the characteristics and properties of people that we consider successful, right, moving forward in their careers and meeting their goals and objectives progressively, and not getting stalled out or hung up, is that ability to kind of control their fear, and keep going, right, and embrace the idea of learning, as a natural consequence of what you would call failure, right? And that really the only way we're going to learn really anything is through that failing process, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, you have to, especially you're going to fail at some things, especially when you're doing work that's as complicated as what we're trying to do with people. I mean, it's just, it's just that's the thing I really want people to understand is and feel better about what they're dealing with is that, I've heard you say this a lot. I mean, this is not child's play, right? This is not for kids. This is big time, complicated, complex work, complex system thinking. It's not easy.
Yep, it's difficult, and where we're at in the healthcare continuum, the consequences of us making errors aren't huge, like people dying or losing limbs, like surgeons and other practitioners, or dying from a disease because they missed the diagnosis. The consequences are high, right? And error, you want to pick up error as soon as possible. For us, we could temporarily injure somebody. We could hurt them orthopedically. We could trigger an immune response. We could waste a lot of time and money thinking we can do something we can't do, right? Which isn't good. Those aren't good consequences. And so, when I was on the nuclear submarine working in the engineering department, our mandate was zero. It was called the zero defect policy, meaning that we weren't allowed to make errors ever. And
That's
so
some serious pressure, dude.
Yeah. So right. So it's like, okay, so how do we set up an environment and a mindset of we're never allowed to make an error here? Because again, the consequence of an error there is, a lot of people die, and you release radiation poisoning into the environment, and so a mistake is big. Now, does that mean that we didn't make mistakes? No, we still made errors, with the goal of zero defect. And we made a big error in one case, where we were sinking on fire.
I remember you telling us that story.
6,000 feet of water. So that was a really bad mistake that we made, and a simple mistake. And so, wow, I get it. Careers were changed because of that, right? Literally we had to scrap a nuclear submarine early because of the damage done. I mean, we're talking about millions and millions of dollars lost. It was ugly.
Crazy stuff, man.
Crazy stuff, right? So, yeah, if your self-esteem was all wrapped up in that, it would have been tough to go back to work in a nuclear power plant and operate that system. You can't operate from a low confidence level because so many other people are relying on you. So get over it, right?
Right. You got to move forward.
Let's go.
Got to keep moving forward, right?
Stay
And what you
focused.
said earlier was really interesting about this idea that once you're at a certain skill level, it's just all, you get to a point where it's a lot of it's just, how your psychology, how you're thinking. There's a reason why a lot of doctors have, pretty extreme self-assurance, is because they, in order to do what they're doing, they almost have to.
Almost the narcissistic arrogance about what they do, right?
Right. No, that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Like, I know the answer, even when I don't. So it's kind of like, you better project confidence, even when you're not sure, right? And being a confident, humble problem solver, is an important thing to project, and how do you tell someone, I don't know the answer, but I'm willing to work on it to find it, and not hesitate, and not be doubtful of myself. We're going to move forward and get this done. I mean, the current pandemic, that's what modern medical researchers and virologists, right? They're like, we got to figure this out. This has to get figured out.
Right. It's got to get figured out, and figured out fast.
Yeah. And so they're going to figure it out. And how you handle pressure, it's usually, where your IR stuff starts to show, when you're coping with uncertainty, and you're coping with pressure, and time pressure, resource pressure. That's it. When I went through the Navy dive school, that was a high pressure situation, and they were testing you to see constantly testing you to see how you handled pressure, so that if you were under pressure, could you keep your cool and stay confident and solve the problem?
Well, because they had to test that, that's why the whole Navy SEAL program is basically designed to, not to show that you have a specific skill set, but that you're just mentally tough enough to get through, situations that may be presented to you that are going to have life and death consequences.
Win or die, right? I mean, so, it's just win. And that mental mindset is the more important concept. And how we can impart that to our clients and to each other as colleagues. I think it's an important conversation that we don't have enough. We should maybe think about a monthly or quarterly IR meeting and check in with each other. How we doing?
Well, I think that'd be a great idea. I think that there's a lot of practitioners that are probably struggling with this. That's why I wanted to have this conversation. The cool thing is, though, is that the systems that we have in place within this program do create a lot of checks and balances, not just for IR, but just for decision-making and session planning, and just the tools just allow us to not become mistake-free, but at least, minimize mistakes and risk based on all the data that we're collecting. So that's always nice to have that, definitely makes me feel more confident when I'm working with somebody.
Yeah, systems are important. They hopefully facilitate thinking and facilitate action. Get you out of your head and out of your bias, and control your bias. And that's the idea for sure. So important. I'm glad you brought it up. Yeah, important stuff. What to do, right? What to do. Exercise, important thing, right? If you have a spiritual life, exercise that, do that, talk with your colleagues and your peers, and flush some of this stuff out. I think to have a strong IR process, you've got to be a little vulnerable, a little humble.
Well, it's interesting. I definitely, it's so funny because I don't know if you experience this, maybe you don't anymore, maybe you did in the past, but it doesn't matter if you have 20 successes in a row, right? Like, you have 20 outcomes that are, what you would be considered, or the client and their fundamental objectives would consider to be, a positive outcome. It's that 21st didn't go the way you want. That's the one that you think about. Or at least that's my experience. I think about the ones that didn't go as well as I would have wanted versus all the ones that did.
Mm-hmm.
And how do we, remember to stay focused on the ones that did go well?
Yeah. What's your own probability, right? So values and preferences, right? What's important to you? Again, there's been incredible breakthroughs, I think, in many areas and disciplines, with a human being who their I and their R is totally entrenched. They are not separated. It's the only thing they think about 24/7, right? Their entire energetic system is focused on this thing. And they do often produce amazing outcomes. But when you look at, again, the values and preferences, if having healthy dynamic relationships with other humans is important, you tend to see that it's a cliche, right? It's just a tragedy of broken relationships around that person.
I mean, you can see there's lots of examples of this, in popular culture, people that we know, Steve Jobs is the person that's coming to mind when you're talking about this, the innovator, brilliant entrepreneur, created some of the most amazing products, technologies that we've ever seen. But from what I've read and seen in movies and stuff, his interpersonal relationships were just a complete disaster.
And so we have to choose. That's where worldview comes into play, right? And again, what's important to us, and what's important as a human. What's your identity, right? I've never seen anyone, at a wake or at a funeral service, say, hey, we want to remember Brandon O'Connor, fellow human, right? They're like, we're going to remember Brandon O'Connor, the business owner, Brandon O'Connor, the muscle specialist, right? We attach the work role title to that person, versus just, this is Brandon O'Connor, great human.
Right.
And whatever makes you a great human, right?
Yeah, and it's tough because, when you really want to be at the top of something, it's hard to, like you said, it's all about preferences and values, but it's hard to because most people that get to the top of different things have a very singular focus.
They've sacrificed.
They've made sacrifices, yeah.
And they tend to be relationship-based sacrifices. Sometimes it's their health. They sacrifice their own health for it. Sometimes they sacrifice relationships. Mostly, maybe those are the two primary things that are sacrificed, right? Is their health and their relationships with other humans.
And it's interesting, I wonder what percentage of people that have made those sacrifices later, have regrets around it. I wonder if half of them have regrets, all of them have regrets, at some point, because at some point you have to realize that no matter how important the work you're doing is, it's like, it's still just, an aspect of life. It's not life itself.
Yeah. Fundamentally, apparently, a healthy human is someone who has, at least some healthy relationships with other humans. I mean, when somebody is a hermit and they separate themselves from society, we don't think about that as a healthy thing. We need the attention of other people, good press or bad press. So it seems to be fundamental. It's like one of the first principles of being a healthy human is having at least a few healthy relationships with other humans. So if those are all sacrificed for something, it's hard to imagine that being a healthy life. Right?
Agreed.
Yeah, I don't think we don't think about it enough. We get caught up. It's so easy to get caught up in work because we spend so much time doing it.
Well, and again, like I was saying earlier, if you're really into it too, if you're really passionate about it, a lot of people are working just to make money, and like these are the folks that are like, retirement can't get here soon enough, right? Because all of their passions are outside of their work role. Whereas, I think people like you and me, a lot of our passion is within our work role, and so it's like we're not looking to for an endpoint to get out of this as soon as humanly possible, so that we can really do the things that, you know, we really want to be doing. At least that's my experience.
Yeah, I agree. I would agree. Yeah. Yep, I
There's
agree.
nothing I enjoy more than actually being at my office working, which is why this time period that we're going through has been extremely difficult for me.
Maybe take some files home, or go and look through your
Oh,
client
I've
files.
been doing it.
Yeah, right.
Believe me, I've been doing it.
See, maybe I generate some ideas, and but
No, been the blessing of the whole thing is I've been reading some textbooks that I haven't had time to read, and, you know, reviewing some stuff, and it's given me some perspectives on some things that I hadn't had before. So that's the gift for sure.
excellent.
I don't get to take the time to really sit and be in my own head very often.
Good stuff. I love
Good
it.
stuff.
Well, listen, thanks for taking time.
Yeah,
Have this
absolutely.
discussion. We'll get this posted up. See if it helps anybody else.